All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, today we're going to talk about Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Both were charged a little over a week ago with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for their involvement in the Rust movie set incident that left Helena Hutchins dead and another producer shot in the arm. It's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out because Hannah Gutierrez Reed's charges are pretty straightforward. She was the hired armorer, which is the gun safety expert that a movie set hires on not only to supply all of the movie ammunition and the guns, and they're the only one that stores the guns, and they're the only one that touches the guns outside of a scene, but putting all of that aside, if you boil it all the way down, the number one job of an armorer is to make sure a real bullet doesn't make it anywhere near a movie set. And if for some reason a real bullet makes it onto the set mixed in with all the other movie bullets, hey, what do we got going here? I'm a little bit disorganized, everybody. If for some reason it makes it in to the mix, there are safety protocols that, if followed, that real bullet will never make it into a gun. But if it makes it onto the set and for some reason into the gun, then as you can imagine, that gun under no circumstances should be handed off to an actor. Here you go. This is a cold, safe movie prop gun that can be treated as a prop. And all of that happened. So that, as far as being an armorer, that's a worst case scenario, total nightmare. You can't blow it any worse. Tanking on a level that most people have nightmares about. Worst case scenario. Here's where it gets interesting. Apparently, the last safety check in theory is supposed to be the armorer gets all the gun ready at their little station backstage or somewhere, and then the final safety check is supposed to be the actor and the armorer during the handoff. They are supposed to check it together one last time, and that's the procedure, I guess. But that didn't happen in this case because they were trying to limit the amount of people in the room where it happened, which is a church, a movie set church. They were trying to limit the amount of people in the church for COVID reasons, to be safe for COVID. So Hannah Gutierrez Reed's lawyers, you better believe, are going to really focus in on that and say, well, yeah, she did blow it incredibly hard with having the real bullet and loading it into the gun, but her boss didn't allow her to do the final check with Alec Baldwin because they didn't want her in the room because of safety for COVID. And so instead of that final check with her and Alec, she handed the gun off to some producer, I think his last name is Hall, and told that guy, this is a cold gun, it's just a movie prop, it's safe. And then that guy Hall is the one that brought the gun to Alec Baldwin, and he told Alec Baldwin, this is a cold gun, you can use it, play around with it in the rehearsal. That guy, Hall, just for that role in it, taking the gun from Hannah and bringing it to Alec, he pled to something and is getting 6 months probation for just that involvement. And so, like I said, Hannah Gutierrez Reed's lawyers are, I guarantee you, going to make the argument it's not her fault because she wasn't allowed to do the final safety check. If she was allowed to, then she would have checked it right before Alec took it from her. They would have checked it together. They would have found the real bullet in the gun. They would have said, hold on, everybody, this is a real bullet. Everybody, stop the presses. And that didn't happen because her boss told her that she couldn't, and therefore it's not her fault. And it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to fly. It's kind of the definition of criminally negligent to get that real bullet in the gun. But we'll see how it goes. Alec Baldwin, on the other hand, from the probable cause affidavit information that's come out, it seems like the prosecution is hanging his charges on two things. One, he skipped the firearms training session. There's an hour-long actor firearms training session that he skipped. If I was his lawyers, I think you could argue that that is irrelevant to a point, because the man was handed a gun and said, "This is a cold gun." Would an hour-long safety seminar for Alec Baldwin turned him into a Keanu Reeves gun expert in just an hour? Probably not. He was told this is a cold gun. Once you're told this is a cold gun, then his mind probably immediately goes back to, okay, I gotta nail this character, I gotta nail these lines, I wanna play around, try to find something real, try to find something true. I think his lawyers are gonna go, he is the actor, the character expert, the gun safety expert, should have made sure that there was not a real bullet in the gun long before it ended up in Alec Baldwin's hands. You can't say, okay, he skipped an hour-long safety seminar and at that point it's all on him. Or maybe you can. So that was the first part, is he skipped that seminar. And then the second part is, I guess they had a little gun refresher seminar after that, and they said he was talking to his family on the phone the whole time, barely paying attention. His mind was in another place, which, looking into this, something kind of funny that I didn't know. Did you know that Alec's wife, Hilaria, gets made fun of because she talks with a bizarre, broken English, Spanish accent, even though she was born and raised in Boston? The paparazzi will be like, "How you doing, Hilaria?" And she'll be like, how do you say good? It's like, why is that lady talking like that? She's from Boston. I really don't get it. Something about rich people. Sometimes they, out of nowhere, they come up with some bizarre European accent. Lindsay Lohan, for a while, had that. Everyone's going, what? Maybe they go on vacation somewhere and they really find themselves and they decide this culture is now a part of me. Or maybe once you're just so rich and detached from reality, you forget who you are. Remember John DuPont late in life decided, I'm Bulgarian. Yes, my last name is DuPont, but I'm full Bulgarian, everybody. So there you go. And also, kind of funny, a week before Alec Baldwin's manslaughter charges were filed, he was getting made fun of because he posted on Instagram, which the Hollywood elite type posting on Instagram is one of my favorite things. Remember at the beginning of COVID when a bunch of stars in their mansion in back gardens decided to sing the song Imagine for everybody? Imagine thinking this will help. I love when the Hollywood elite decide, you know what, I got something to say. Give me my phone. I'm going to film my face. I always picture their PR manager spitting out their coffee when they see it the next day. What are you doing? You're a movie star. Unless you're up on the big screen reciting award-winning lines, I don't want to see your face. You don't record yourself doing anything. But a week before his charges were filed, Alec posted a video where he was like, hey, everybody, it's Alec. It's December. Oh, no, it's January. There I go again. What, that's your thing? You just don't know what month it is? Oh, there I go again. It's January. But I couldn't help everybody notice that my wife is just centimeters away from 1 million Instagram followers. And yes, I love my wife. She's the greatest thing in the world. Everything you say about your wife, yes, I love her so much. But there's nothing that I would love more in the world than if a bunch of you could follow her on Instagram. Yeah, we have 14 kids together and all the money we'll ever need and more dream properties than anyone could ever dream about. But it's not enough for us. She wants more Instagram followers. You would think we would be fulfilled, but we're not. And even the tone gets pathetic as it goes. He goes, please, 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 can you follow my wife, Hilaria, on Instagram? It's like, get yourself together, Alec. What are you doing? And I went over to the Instagram account that he wanted everybody to follow, and it's nothing. It's what most people would call a personal account, where you don't want a bunch of weird strangers following it. It's just her kids eating breakfast and her kid sitting on the couch. And if you're friends and family and you love them a lot, then it'd be cool to see. But for just a normal person on a day-to-day basis, it's a pretty useless account. And so he's going, please, can you follow it? And then a week later, it even looks a little bit worse. Is that's what you guys are worried about? And now you're looking at manslaughter. But so the two things that the prosecution, it sounds like, are hanging his charges on is, one, he skipped the gun safety lessons, and then, which I don't know if it moves him into the criminally negligent manslaughter category. When I first heard the charges, I felt a little bad for Alec, because I just keep going to the fact that he was handed that gun and said, this is a cold gun. And then, but second, and this, I guess, if the evidence, there are scenarios where he could be moved into that criminally negligent, is they're saying that they're calling him a main producer, and they're saying pretty much that the safety on this movie set was a total disaster, criminally negligent territory. So I think what it's going to come down to is, what does that mean that Alec what were his duties as a main producer, and how did he not do them? Because a producer, when a big star like that gets named a producer, it could be for a lot of reasons. It could be Alec put up a bunch of money for the project, but he doesn't really have any say in the hiring or what goes on with the employees on the movie set. Once he puts up the money, he's kind of just, that's all he is for the producer. Or it could also be, it's a smaller movie and they can't afford someone like Alec Baldwin, who's pretty expensive, so they pay him way under his normal rate, but then they make him a producer, so once it's in the theaters and it starts making money on the back end, then he gets a cut from that. Or what they're making it sound like is he was not those. He was a, quote, main producer that had a very strong hand in how everything was working on the movie set, and because it was such a disaster safety-wise, it's on him, because you're running this ship, Alec, and the picture they're painting it was such a disaster safety-wise, is something like this was bound to happen. And so what I think, it's going to be interesting, what were his duties, or what did he fail in doing as the producer, and also what were the circumstances around Hannah Gutierrez Reed's hiring? Because it's pretty clear that she shouldn't have been there. She was not qualified. It doesn't sound like she has the right, disposition to do that job. This was her second movie as a professional armorer. She was 24 years old at the time. She had just graduated college. Her father, Nell, I think his name's Nell Reed. Her father's a highly respected armorer in Hollywood, has been doing it for years. And so she graduates from college. Probably her and her dad were sitting around going, all right, now what does Hannah do? You know what? Let's just make you an armorer. I've made a decent living in Hollywood being an armorer. I'll train you, and then you can do it, and that will be your career as well. So Hannah Gutierrez Reed followed her dad for training for one movie. That's it. He showed her how to do it, and then there you go. She's off in the professional world of being an armorer. She did one movie before the Rust movie, which was 6 weeks before. It was her first one. Nicolas Cage was in the movie, and that movie went horrible for her. There were complaints about her. Who is this lady? She's not doing well at all. I'm scared to be around when she's working with the gun. She's supposed to be the gun safety expert. She had two major incidents on her first movie. The whole thing, that movie only lasted a month, and she had two major incidents. One, she carried a bunch of guns on set in a way that you're not supposed to carry guns safely, and they were pointing at people, and everyone's going, Hannah, please, what are you doing? Imagine you're just eating lunch on set, enjoying your hour off, and all of a sudden you look up and there's a gun pointed right at your face. Hannah, please, you don't hold, why are you holding them like that? And she's going, oh, sorry, I'm just carrying all the guns on, don't mind me. And then another time on that movie, she fired off a blank on set, which if you're gonna fire off a blank, you're supposed to announce it. All right, we're gonna do this. People can get off set, they can put earplugs in, they can prepare themselves. All of a sudden, boom, she fires one off. Nicolas Cage's ear, you blew out my ear. What are you doing? Nicolas Cage stormed off set, and in the interrogation that Hannah did, you get to see in her, the way she handled that. She didn't go, I really messed up, I feel bad. Nicolas Cage I blew his ear out a little bit, but the way she chalks it up is she goes, yeah, I mean, I shot the blank off. Nicolas Cage got a little pissy. It's like, yeah, Hannah, they're trying to run a professional ship, and you're shooting guns off and pointing them at people as you carry on. So that's her first movie. Goes terrible. There's complaints to the higher-ups about her. She's off for a week, and then she gets hired onto Rust. So what were the circumstances for her being hired onto Rust? Because if the circumstances were the Rust people go, hey, her dad's respected, she's probably good too, I think it'll work, let's hire her, then it's probably more on Hannah, the responsibility. But if there are internal memos or emails or the production team for Rust, if someone testifies, I brought up that she's not qualified, she's too young, she doesn't have the right disposition, I brought up those concerns, and I was told, hey, this is all we can afford. If they tried to save a buck, listen, this is all we can afford, we're going with her. If they knew she wasn't up to par, but picked her anyway for financial reasons, then again, I think it's on the producers, which they're calling Alec a main producer. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. The prosecution right now has a bunch of production staff on their witness list. The director, other people. So you got to think, if the prosecution has them on the list, they're going to probably get up there and testify that the whole thing was a total nightmare. And if Alec is responsible for making sure it's not a total nightmare, and he was just trying to save money, we'll go with her, we don't have that much money. You can't if you don't have enough money to make a movie, you can't make a movie. And if tried to save money getting possibly the worst armorer of all time, I think it does move him into responsible. But that's why it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. I mean, it reminded me of a story that I want to tell you guys. Nepotism-related story. So maybe like 5 or 6 months ago, I'm watching TV, fell asleep on the couch, and woke up around midnight. Some loud commercials on, and Walter's sleeping there. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to take Walter out to pee out in front of the building, and then we'll go to bed. So I wake him up, wake up, Walter, we got to go outside. I'm half asleep. I get him on the leash. I go out in front of the building to let him pee, and right when I leave my front door, this guy goes, yo, I saw you do stand-up like 5 years ago. And I just was like, oh, right on, man. And he goes, yeah, it's actually perfect that I ran into you, because my friends and family think this is crazy, but I'm kind of a crazy guy. I want to be a writer for a comedian. And I'm sitting there just going, oh my God, damn it. If I would have just left, if I would have come out here 5 hours earlier or 5 hours later, I probably wouldn't even have run into him. And he knows where I live. He saw me come out my front door, and I was just like, oh, I wasn't in the most social mood. I was like, oh, well, I actually don't use a rider. I'm kind of just doing my own thing, but good luck, buddy. And he goes, well, he was a little bit, I think, angry that I wasn't like, yeah, that's good enough for me. You want to be a rider? I met you out here on the street. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock right here. You're the new head rider. But I just was like, sorry, I don't even really use a rider. And he's going, well, do you have an Instagram? And I was like, no, and I actually don't. But he kind of took that as I probably do, but I just didn't want to give it to him. But I don't. I go, no, I don't. And he goes, what's your name? And I said, Scott. And then I could tell he was like, all right, fine, like, be that way. And then I was like, if you want to be a writer for a comedian, start going to open mics, meet other comedians that are just started, build some relationships, and then you guys can get something going together and you can write for them. I did all that 10 years ago, and I'm explaining this, sort of resenting that I have to explain this at midnight out on the street after being asleep. I'm going, build a relationship with some comedians, and then you guys can get something going together. I really just don't use a writer. I don't know what to tell you. And he's going, all right, no, I get it, man. I get it. And then he's walking across the street, and the guy that owns the business next to my building was out there smoking a cigar, and they had a few words together like they know each other. And then the guy that wanted to be my writer, as he's walking across the street, he goes, hey, check out my car. And it was this brand new, incredibly badass, shiny Dodge Challenger with aftermarket wheels. The thing looked amazing. Looked like a car commercial under the street light. It was like, damn. So he goes, hey, look at my car. And I was like, yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome. You have an awesome car. And he gets in the Dodge Challenger, boom, drives away. And the owner of the business next to me, who's smoking a cigar, it seemed like they knew each other. So I was like, who is that guy? Do you know him? And he goes, yeah, he's grew up in the neighborhood. He's been here forever. And yeah, I kind of know him. And I go, well, is he harmless? Because he just saw where I lived and he wasn't too happy with me that I didn't immediately make him the head writer. And I was like, is he harmless? He goes, yeah, I think so. He's a little bit weird, but he's pretty much harmless. And then he tells me a story that guy's father owns a really successful business here in New York City. And it had always been the plan that the guy with the really nice car, the Dodge that wanted to be the rider, it had always been the plan that at a certain point he would take over his dad's very successful business. And just recently the dad had decided not to give it to his son. He didn't think that he had what it takes to run the company, and instead the dad gave it over to the best employee to let the best employee run the business instead. And the rich dad, bought his son the car, the Dodge Challenger, instead. So instead of the business, he got the Challenger. But I mean, I don't think there's any shame in that. I don't know if I have the right personality traits to run some successful company. There's no shame in it. I'm not too organized, but I think it was a good story to hear that the employee, the most respected employee that had been forever, they're taking it over instead. You don't hear that very often. A lot of times just the kid or somebody gets it because of nepotism, and the whole thing tanks incredibly hard, and everybody that works there is going, well, this is the end of an era. This place is horrible now. But wanted to tell you guys that story. Hope you're having a good week. I love you all. See you next time. Why? Stiven Y. Shamida.